Good morning. I am checking in here from Asheville, North Carolina. We had a snowy, stormy weekend, and it was quite the journey, internal journey for me through grief, suicidality, and revenge. And I wanted to share a little bit about it, specifically the link between these parts of me as I see them. And it was all triggered Friday morning as I had an altercation as I was driving back home. And the street in front of my house can feel narrow sometimes by American car size standards. And Americans just sometimes have a very different perception of how many things can fit in a space as contrasted with Indians or Asians. So the protocol that I've seen on my street is that people, when there is a car coming from the opposite side, people seem to wait, like pull over to the side and let the other car pass by. And sometimes that makes sense to me when the car is like a huge Ford F-350 truck, and some other times it doesn't. It's just like two little sedans that can like easily pass each other. And I would say I generally lean towards just driving past if the car seems small enough. But then I think some of the people driving these cars are also older people. They have a weaker perception or sense of how much the boundaries of their car extend to. And then I won't get into the analysis of it too much, but what happened was I was driving in one direction, there was a car coming from the opposite direction. I noticed that the car was moving in the center of the street instead of on one side, the left side. And I kept driving, I wasn't driving on the center, in the middle of the street, I was driving on the right. And then the woman in the car, this perceptibly poor black lady, she kept like gesticulating at me, asking me to like move over or pull over and let her pass through. And she seemed like already pretty visibly dysregulated. And I was quite caught by that moment. I could have chosen to just pull over, but I chose not to. And she just kept getting more and more frantic. And then she pulled over, and there was enough space for actually both of us to pass by as I had estimated. But then she slowed down and just started yelling at me. I don't remember what all she said, but at one point, I again had the choice. I could have just continued forward instead of engaging her. But for whatever reason, my instinct was to roll the window down, and I yelled back at her, like, learn how to drive better. And she was saying some things. She was just very dysregulated. And then she yelled. I think then she saw me and saw my beard. And I've gotten this before from people that, many people will place me in the Middle East because of the beard. I think Indians, other than Punjabis, do not have thick, lustrous beards, which lives in me as an unfortunate drop in martial masculine energy in many parts of India and many communities in India. And things are changing now. I think Indian beards are coming back in full force because I think India is regaining its like warrior spirit, which is really beautiful to witness. So yeah, she saw my beard and then yell like, "Go back to Iraq." And yeah, it really caught me by surprise. It's been a while since I've encountered would I call this a racist incident? There were some assumptions made on the basis of the color of my skin and the facial features that I have, and then she said something unkind to me based on those assumptions. And from how I could see her, she was just really dysregulated. Like, I imagine she just generally does not have nervous system capacity to like hold herself in moments of stress, and it was stressful for her that I did not pull over, that I was like coming towards her. Yeah. This ties into another like sense I've had, which is a little weird to speak about sometimes, but I've really had this sense that my presence, my being itself can be like dysregulating for humans. Not all humans, but some humans. Like the story I carry is that my presence can be dysregulating for humans who are like really trying hard to not look at their shadows and stuff that is repressed, because I have such an orientation towards uncovering what is repressed, both in conversation and like in the work that I do, and the orientation I have is towards like uncovering and verbalizing, expressing, speaking, releasing. That someone who's like very oppositely oriented can be like very dysregulated in my presence. And I had this like other weird incidents where this woman agreed to like take care of my cats while I was gonna visit Costa Rica, and she was from Atlanta. She seemed fine. A black lady, and this is, I'm just not making any claims or assumptions about black people when I say this. It's just something to notice and observe. And perceptibly like well-to-do, middle class, I think. She seemed lovely, and she came over to my house, and then I had left for Costa Rica, and a day later, I received a message saying like, "Hey, like your house is too unclean," and I've been like just scrubbing it clean non-stop since I've arrived, and I can't do this anymore. I have to leave. And I'm not like the cleanest of people, but I've had like many female friends, women visit, and I've just never heard someone get so dysregulated by the lack of cleanliness in my house. Cats come back. So yeah, I was just a little surprised. Like, it wasn't at the state where, like, it wasn't inhabitable, and I was also just curious, like, oh, what is this person's cleaning routine? Like, maybe I need to check how they keep their house clean. I think I should add a clip of my house with this video to demonstrate what I mean. Yeah, but it's not that unclean that you step in and you're like, oh my god, I have to just clean everything, and you just keep scrubbing. And my sense now is that, yeah, there is something about the presence of my house that can be really soothing for some, which is a reflection I've received from certain kinds of human, like, oh, it's so soothing to be in your house, and then very activating for others. And I think it's that same difference. It's like people who are going down into the dark feel soothed by my presence and by the state of my house, which I treat as an extension of myself. So I keep it clean, keep it tidy. And those who are not are like really activated. So back to the story, she yelled at me to go back to Iraq, and I was just surprised, taken aback. And then it just like, I was like numbed out in that moment, but then it like fucking hit me and like brought up all of these questions of belonging. Like, what am I doing here in this country? And I've had some like space created in some friendships. Like, I've taken a few steps back from some friendships which felt untethered, and it just also, there was like a causticness to those words which like really reached deep inside me, and there was so much grief coming up. And I'm not sure what your relationship is as an adult survivor, someone who has experienced sexual abuse, rape, perhaps even as a child. What I notice is that whenever there is like any flavor of aggression that comes towards me, if it enters me, it like just brings up all of that pain again. At least in the stage I am at in my journey, like, I've really practiced releasing the grief. So I feel like an expert in just like crying and allowing the grief to release, and my heart is often light and soft, which is all beautiful. But then there is a certain amount of like porosity that has created to stimulants and triggers from the environment, where many things can like release that grief. Like, everything is releasing the grief, which I suppose is the stage of my healing journey, is all about grief release. But there is like an exhaustion that comes from that, and this one in particular like really hit something, because it was a poor black woman, and all those three identifying characteristics like brought up so much empathy in me towards her. Just aware of like wealth privilege and how it like helps one's healing journey, aware of the horrific history of black people in the US, and also aware of just what women have to go through, while also keeping in mind women do horrible things too, which is historically they've just carried so much of the burden of sexual transgressions. And sexual transgressions are way worse in my mind than a physical transgression or a verbal transgression. So I was feeling compassionate towards her in that moment. There was a part of me that had come up with a nasty thing to say back to her, kind of using my awareness of black history in the US to say something really insulting back. But I felt no desire to do that. And honestly, I was left with this inquiry of like, what would it have taken me to reach out to her in that moment? Because we were pretty close. We were like paused and just like hold her hand and say like, breathe, like just breathe here, just pause here for a second. Just kind of ground her from her dysregulated state, and could have been a beautiful moment, or not. Who knows? So it just kept bringing up so much grief, like just questions around what am I doing with my life, I've not really made much money in the last 6 months since I quit my software engineering job. I'm trying to like set up these businesses, but none of them seem to, like, I've made a little bit of money here and there by doing interesting odd things, but yeah, none of my businesses are anchored and like really flowing. So yeah, I was just like crying non-stop from like Friday, and then I noticed this very familiar journey of like just releasing grief, like feeling light and feeling for stuck, and then like figuring out some way of releasing. Like first I like sent a message on a community thread I'm on saying like, hey, good morning folks, like I encountered an instance of verbal racism coming at me, and I noticed that some of it is like really stuck in my heart and creating sluggishness in my body, and I would really appreciate some support witnessing so that I could just release. I could really notice that it was really difficult for me to cry. So I was like, hey, like, can someone just hold space so that I can cry in your presence? And then this lovely sister from the community, she's of like Lebanese / I think Palestinian ethnic origin, reached out, and yeah, she was very open to like holding space. Cats are running again. And yeah, I just like wept and wept and wept in her presence. Then I ended up talking to my sister at some point, and things have been like really not great with my mother. Like my relationship with my mother is like so not good right now. It really makes me sad. Like I wish for like harmonious relationships, harmonious friendships, and harmonious family relationships. Like there's a cousin of mine who has just like stopped responding to me ever since I started opening up about my repressed sexual trauma journey. And you know, I was organizing like all of my cousins together for Thanksgiving, like just a year before that. So yeah, there's a lot of like disharmony, disconnection in my family situation. So my relationship with my sister is stronger than ever, which I feel really grateful for. And I was able to really cry while talking to her, while telling her like how I wish I could just connect better with my mother, but it's just really challenging right now. So I cried and cried and cried, and then I noticed how, yeah, you know, like it's been really easy for me to let go and release, and at the same time, like grief release takes a physical toll. Like it takes a fucking physical toll, and I was just like exhausted, really tired, like unable to do my workouts and just unable to do much at all. Like I can't even like read much when I'm in a deep grief release portal. So there was this like fatigue that comes up in response to that like grief release, like how much more, and also an inquiry as to like why am I so porous? Like why do a dysregulated person's, like in that moment I did not even see her as angry. Like I really just saw her as a really dysregulated person, and it's like why are her words reaching in so deep? And a lot of my journey over the last year has been like plugging my energetic leaks, mostly around like erotic leaks. So, you know, fully like curing my pornography addiction, like really cultivating the capacity to hold my eros instead of like have it spill out, both in engagements and with myself. This was after like a year of like really nurturing my body and like really developing a connection to taking care of my body physically. And now I feel like I'm at a stage where I'm exploring how do I allow these things to just bounce off. Like, how do I create a strong, energetic field around me so that I can stay open in my heart and just allow these things to bounce off and not like enter into my gut. And my sense is that the fact that it enters into my gut means there is, still more to be released. And once it's released, nothing will enter. Like, that's my sense of it. But yeah, from that place of fatigue, then it's very common for me to start feeling suicidal. It's happened before. Like, it can either happen when I'm like unable to access the grief because I'm so numbed out, and then I'm just like numb and sluggish for like days, which is what I would frame a depressive phase. And then once the depressive phase lasts for a certain period of time and I like lose connection to my sensuality, in the sense that food doesn't taste as good, like touch doesn't feel as good, and or if in the past I would be caught up in self-abuse cycles, which is just like violent ways of masturbating and like pornographic binging, then if that persists, then I would get to this place of like, oh, this life isn't worth living. And there is this other flavor of like suicidality that I've noticed, which is one of like really practicing grief release. So really not getting into any of the self-abusive cycles, but still like getting exhausted from all of the crying, like literally physically exhausted, like eyes reddening, body feeling tired and fragile. And then from that place, like kind of taking that physical state of being and then factoring in what I need to do on a daily basis to just maintain that physical state of being, like cook food and laundry and like bills and take care of the cats, like clean up their fucking puke and clean the cat litter. And it can bring me to this place of like, oh my god, this is just fucking pathetic. Like, why am I spending so much energy just like existing, barely existing? And that can like open up a suicidal portal to like just fantasizing about an end. It feels important to note here, in case anyone of the people who care deeply about me are listening, like I've never really taken any actual steps, wasn't close to doing that, and I've gone through this like many times. And at the same time, to be honest, I think anyone who has gone through suicidality will probably resonate that I think this part will always be in me, and who knows how my death is fated. Like, I honestly don't know. And so there is still, it doesn't feel like fully in my past or something. And then what I noticed, this is the interesting piece, is that from that like just self-destruction energy, there was this voice that went in my head like, Vignesh, if you're gonna kill yourself, why not kill that guy first and then kill yourself? And time and again I've noticed what a shift this is, because it like, instead of the destructionness being turned inwards, like it suddenly like finds another human to direct itself towards. In this case, the perpetrator who's alive, who I tried to lodge a case against last year, but like the complexities of taking him through the Indian court system were just too challenging and expensive. So I haven't really indulged in vengeance towards him in a while. But then in that pivot, I again spent time thinking about different vengeance pathways and thinking about like kidnapping him, like torturing him to get a confession out, maybe get a confession out and record it, not just about myself, but like every other child he has abused, like the names and who his accomplices were. Um, there were torture fantasies involved in it, like just parts of me that would gain so much pleasure, just like slicing him open, maybe even like chopping off his cock and burying it somewhere. So this, and I noticed again, like in that indulgence of these vengeance fantasies, like life starts flooding back into me somehow. Like I just start feeling more energized, and yet there is this awareness that like this is a guy in his early 80s. Like he might just like die of a heart attack if I just were to mention to him and ask him like, hey, like why did he rape me and who else did he rape. Like the shock of that itself might be enough to like for him to pass on. So what after that? What is the pivot? Like, yeah, what is the pivot moment if he were to die off for all of this? Like, for that journey of grief, fatigue, self-destruction, like where is the exit route? There's some answers coming to me as I sit with it. Like there are these tools like shamanic body trauma release tools, like aspecting, where you call in the spirit of your abuser and address them and kind of pretend to be them and respond back and keep doing that back and forth. And I did that with my first perpetrator, who was my grandfather, who was already dead by the time I recovered memories. And if any of you need support in doing a ceremony ritual like that to release, like I release so much, like I almost never, I don't hold any charge towards my maternal grandfather anymore, because I release so much in that ritual. I'm happy to offer you my services in holding space for you to like really get all of the grief and rage out. And that was before I discovered multiple perpetrators. Back then I thought I had only one. I can link an essay I wrote on that subject in the description. So I think there is an avenue, and that fits because I tried to do that same ritual with this other guy, but I wasn't successful to the extent that I was with my grandfather, because he was, and then I concluded that I think it is because he's still alive, and the guidance inside me was like, Vignesh, you need to address him directly because he's still alive. So if he were to die, I think I could just do that ritual and release the agony. But while he's alive, like I have to address him directly. And I don't know how much of my journey you have tracked, but I tried doing that a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, and his daughter like blocked me, like my aunt, which is quite unfortunate. So in closing, I wanted to just invite you, if you're someone who struggles with suicidality and you have a history of childhood sexual abuse, play with reorienting that self-destructiveness outwards towards the perpetrator and see what shifts in you. Like I found great relief from doing that, and like really allowing space for these like vengeance fantasies. And I often listen to these parts of me sharing these vengeance fantasies like they were little children, like just telling me stories, and I go, okay, yeah, and I'm like having conversations, and it's like unclear as to where this is gonna take me. There is fears in some other parts of me of like, oh, what if I actually acted on this and it just changed the direction of my life journey? And right now this really works. Yeah, it's really worked for me. Like really indulging in vengeance fantasies has like really worked for me. And the current agreement I have with this part of me that wants to that gets soothed when I indulge in the vengeance fantasy is that I'm actually going to explore what it would take to do this outside of the legal system, because I explored what it would take to get reparations. I actually explored it methodically. Like at first I tried directly, then I tried through the legal system. Actually, at first I tried through my parents, and they just did not have the capacity to do that or help me do that, which bless their souls. But it's, I pray that parents around the world just receive more strength, more courage in dealing with such situations, and are really able to like stand up for their kids. And my parents have showed up to some extent, so now, not to completely discredit them, but I think they could do more. So I tried that, then I tried directly addressing myself, then I tried the legal system, and then now I'm at the place where I'm like, okay, I'm going to explore what it takes to hire someone to bring him to a place where a conversation can be had with him remotely. I might try to just video call him before that. That's always an alternative approach. Yeah, and see if I can extract some kind of an admittance. That's the agreement I have. At least like look into how much it would cost. Is the agreement I have with this part of me that desires vengeance. And yeah, from that point onwards, I just feel like when I reached that agreement internally, like I just woke up and I was just like, oh my god, I have energy again. Like I have energy again, and I can just do things. I can live my life. I can move around. I'm connected to my creative ambitions. Yeah, so for those of you who are like kind of stuck in this depressive place, my suggestion to you would be to like first work towards like releasing tears. Do whatever you can to get to the place where you can like release tears, and that can take different paths. Like one path is a rage-based path, like you just like hit things, go to a room where you can break shit, do some martial arts, like go and yell in a forest, break things that remind you of your perpetrators, ask a friend to like hold space for you while you yell at them. So like kind of tap into the rage and then see if you can kind of release the story that the rage is associated with, and just like feel the fire, and then see if that like jostles your grief. And then the other path is like a grief, following the direction of grief, and just like really inducing tears. And there's like different ways of doing that, which I'm happy to offer my services to you to help you get there. Like just by like shaking like your body, like you're crying, just like making those sounds can sometimes like jostle it enough and get the tears flowing. You could try like MDMA microdosing or an MDMA ritual, and that can sometimes open your heart enough that you can cry. But before you do all of that, you have to like really tell yourself like, hey, like you deserve to be able to cry, and it's okay to cry, it's okay to release, and you're crying so that you can release, and there is nothing shameful about crying. Like really root in that belief, and then find ways of like crying. And either tapping into your grief or your rage is a great way of like breaking the numbness of depression. for those of you brave enough, I think cold showers is worth trying if you're like numbed out. There's something about like the cold water hitting your body that I think brings the energetic numbness out into the physical layer. Like your body responds to the freezingness of the cold in the physical layer, so then in the energetic layer your body loosens up more and it doesn't stay numb or frozen, because numbness is essentially a trauma freeze response that has just like solidified in your energetic body. So like experiencing the shocking numbness of freezing cold brings that out into your physical body, and so your energetic body loosens up. Yeah, again, I'm very happy to be your guide in this journey if you need my support. I'm going to be launching my website soon, offering internal family systems, which is a very powerful modality to harmonize these different parts between us that create so much conflict sometimes. You know, the self-critic, the suicidal part that wants to kill ourselves, and how do we like stay with these different parts harmoniously and not get scared of them, and still be the conscious agent of our own lives. I think IFS is a beautiful modality, and I'm happy to be of service through that for you. Yeah, I hope this doesn't come across as like too much marketing or something like that's. I'm not trying to like make a lot of money out of it. I am oriented towards, I think I've gone through some like crazy shit, and I've come out and I'm at a fairly like great place, honestly, even though I have these cycles, and I'm so intimately familiar with childhood sexual abuse, CPTSD. I'm like feeling really drawn to like nothing else feels meaningful to me work-wise. Like software engineering was no longer feeling meaningful, and this would feel so meaningful. And I tried doing that for free, and it's just not sustainable. So I was like, okay, I need to just set up a business, charge a reasonable price, and then start helping people. So that's where I'm at. All right, leave your thoughts, comments if you watched till this point. Love hearing how this content is reaching you. What is it bringing up in you? Be kind to the extent you can when you respond. The internet can be an easy place to just like let hate out, and whatever hatred, rage you have, I would suggest that you direct it energetically towards your perpetrators. If you can't just like release it into the ether, which I can't, at least like right now, I have to like somehow direct it towards this guy, and I wonder what's gonna happen after he dies. Like, who am I gonna direct this to? Maybe I'll just do that shamanic aspecting ritual and release all rage fully. Whew. It's good to be back on this podcast. I haven't created content in a bit, and I received 2 or 3 messages over the last couple of months from strangers like thanking me, which is so beautiful to receive. It's also stunning sometimes to look at the analytics of the podcast and see how people from all across the world tune into it. I think last I remember seeing some analytics. I hope they were not wrong, but they were like people from over 150 countries have listened to bits and pieces of this podcast, which is pretty stunning to me. Always grateful to receive words of kindness, gratitude, appreciation, and open to collaborations. If you are a content creator yourself, I'm like very open to collaborations right now. Beautiful to be back, and wish you a beautiful, gorgeous week. Truly harmonious, peaceful. May you stay regulated. May you be connected to your creativity. And may you be soaked in loving kindness for yourself and for everyone.